Welcome everybody. And the way this is going to work is that we're going to have a little discussion around certain topics. We're going to start with that. All our lovely experts will be jumping in on with their expertise and experience in the field of parenting. And after we do the introductions, we'll just start the discussion. We will have a Q&A. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end, where you can type in your questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and then we will select some of those to be answered. And then at the very end, we'll kind of talk about some resources and gifts that all the wonderful experts have for us today. So let me start with myself. My name is Pollak. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I work with kids and families for the past 20 years. Have a private practice here in San Diego, California. And some of you might know me from the Becoming a Peaceful Parent Summit. I hosted this wonderful, incredible summit that all these experts were part of it, and really brought some incredible value and support for parents. And we are living in unprecedented times right now. We have a global pandemic. We are in crisis. So I wanted to put this panel discussion together to give some support, information, anything that might be helpful at these difficult times, because we are living in a world that is changing. The experience of touching a doorknob is very different nowadays. We are becoming aware of these kinds of things. And so I've been thinking about this a lot and thinking about what we can learn from this virus. And that's going to be kind of like the main main focus of today is what are we going to learn from this? I am a trauma therapist. And one of the things that I've learned as a trauma therapist is that at the end of the person having gone through the treatment, there are always gifts of trauma. There are unseen, unknown, beautiful, amazing gifts that the person might not otherwise have experienced or realized without the trauma. So my perception of the virus is there will be gifts from that as well. And some of the gifts are things like, realization that we are all equal. It impacts all of us throughout the world. Realizing how connected we actually are, because now through that connection is how the virus spread. So the positive side of that, let's realize that we are connected. How people are, such as the experts today, we are all coming forward, being generous and supporting each other. And it's really showing us what is important, and the fundamental important things in life, like being grateful for our health, being grateful for the family connection, time that we can now spend together. And it's really calling us all forward to be visionaries, to be creative. Lots of businesses are even pivoting. And my call for you is to, how can you, this is an interruption, it's a reset. And how can you as a parent and as a family kind of like reinvent your family so that we all come out of this as completely new and transformed. So that's my little take on what's going on in the world and the virus. So let's do introductions. I will start with Bryan. Hi, Bryan.
Hey, good afternoon, Paula.
Good afternoon. Lovely to have you here. Bryan is the founder of the Post Institute. He was one of the forefathers for developing the stress model, and they're part of contributing to the regulation theory. So you're going to be really important today in terms of our discussion about stress. And Bryan's approach is really like this love-based, attachment-based approach with families. And he has a wonderful book out there called From Fear to Love. So thank you for all your contribution, Bryan, and lots of other resources as well.
Glad to be here and to be of service.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then we have our lovely Dr. Nicole Libin. How are you today, Nicole?
I'm good, Paula. Thank you.
Great. Good to have you here today. Nicole is mindfulness educator and an author. So she has lots of resources on her website. Nicole, can you tell us what your website is again so people can jump in there?
Yes, definitely. The website is called followyourbreath.com. I can type it in the chat in a moment too.
Yeah, that would be great. Type it in the chat. And, you know, Nicole is focused on cultivating peace and focus and mindfulness one breath at a time. And your book is very timely. You know, you have a book out there called Mindful Parenting in the Chaotic World. And our world is certainly chaotic. So I can't wait to talk to you about what ideas you have for us today.
Thank you.
And then there's the new book also, Sticky Brains, and which is a children's book about neuroplasticity. So thank you for your contribution.
Thanks, Paula.
Great. And Leslie. Hi, Leslie.
Hello, Paula.
Hi. Good to hear your voice. And
Yes.
Leslie is a wonderful, wonderful parenting coach. She's the founder of Pure Joy Parenting, and she's all about how to bring joy to parenting. And boy, do we need that nowadays. So figuring out how we even bring joy during this time of crisis.
Yes.
Right? And so moving from fear-based to joy-based parenting, right?
Yes.
And Leslie is a co-author of a book called Chaos to Connection, and I love that. And sometimes these chaotic times are the best times to also connect. So thank you for everything that you do, Leslie.
You're so welcome. Excited to be here, Paula.
Excellent. Then we have Kim Lange. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Paula. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Good to have you here today. Kim is the founder of Growing Up Confident. She's all about helping kids grow confident, have emotional intelligence, and have social intelligence as well, and helping a lot of parents figure out how they can support that in their children. So she's a wealth of information, tools, and resources. So I can't wait to talk to you too about what kind of ideas do you have for our parents today.
Absolutely. So there's lots of emotions coming up, and helping
Oh my-
us not only tend to our own, but figure out how to navigate our kids' emotions during this time is essential.
Yeah, exactly. Great, great. And then finally we have Dr. Susan Pollak. Hi, Susan.
Hi, great to be with all of you today.
Okay, thank you so much for taking your time. And Susan is a clinical psychologist. She's an author and a speaker in the world of mindfulness and meditation, and especially self-compassion. So Susan is here to contribute around that. And she has a book out there. Highly recommend that. It's called Self-Compassion for Parents. So she will be bringing us that perspective.
And I also want to bring you some humor and laughter, and even a pandemic playlist that you can dance to with your kids.
Oh, I love that. Pandemic playlist. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Great. So let's just jump right in. If you have questions, put them in the chat. Okay, I'm just reading something here. Yeah, put them in the chat. Is everybody hearing me? Let me just check with the participants, making sure that everybody is hearing me. Okay,
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Somebody was just saying that they were not hearing, so perfect. All right, so we are rolling it with these technical difficulties here. I want to start today with discussion around stress. I mean, it is really stressful times right now. So I'm kind of throwing this ball to one of you to start with, and then we'll open up to for other people to kind of jump in there. So I'm gonna throw the ball to Bryan. What can you tell us about stress, and maybe tell us a little bit about what are the expected responses in children when they are experiencing these changes in their schedule and their routine and being at home, and you know, their lives are kind of topsy-turvy. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think that where parents really need to look at is just a change in behaviors. A change in behaviors, a change in feeling expressions. You know, we all respond, or I say we react to stress in one of two different ways. We either become hypo-aroused and more shut down, more withdrawn, more depressed, or we become more hyper-aroused, more hyperactive, more aggressive. And it's just important for parents to realize that when there's such a radical change to children, it's not just the fact that there's such a radical change to their routine, it's also just a radical change to what they are now experiencing from the world of adults. And they are not equipped to understand all of that unconscious, nonverbal, energetic experience that's going on. And that's going to cause stress, and that stress is going to drive their behaviors. And so looking at, you know, my perspective is always trying to encourage parents to look underneath the behavior and to realize that your child's not just being bad, and they're not just taking advantage of a situation. They're not just trying to take advantage of not being in school. They are literally operating from a place of stress and sometimes overwhelm, and that is driving that behavior. So if you can attend to that, it can be very beneficial.
Right. Okay, that's a really great point. So a lot of like understanding and patience with the kids nowadays, and really realizing that, yeah, these behaviors that are coming up, really the underlying source of that is that stress that they are experiencing. And so what are some ways that parents could can really respond to that? Or maybe some of the other panelists can jump in here and give some ideas, like how can parents respond to those behaviors and that stress?
I'm happy to jump in here. This
Yeah,
is
go ahead, Susan.
Dr. Pollak. So, and I want to second a number of Bryan's points. I think if we think about what's happening here, we have all lost all our supports, and all of us feel like we're unraveling. We're all more irritable, impatient, frustrated, and we lose it at times, and our kids will as well. With a younger kid, you may see the stress manifested somatically. So kids usually can't quite verbalize what they're feeling, and they may say, my tummy hurts, you know, because they feel their feelings in their stomach. With another kid, you may have tantrums. With an older kid, with a teenager, you may see anger and moodiness. Know that they need your love, they need your compassion, and they need your support. So the more you can just understand what they're going through and bring some compassion to that, like, oh yes, this hurts. This is tough for me too, the better off everyone will be.
Right. Yeah, let's get through it together. And really, I think what I'm kind of hearing you say as well, Dr. Pollak, is just, you know, letting go of some of that pressure maybe, you know, because what I've noticed, a lot of parents, of course, there's homeschooling and things like that, but there's tremendous amount of pressure. So maybe stepping back a little bit from that and really connecting with the child and understanding and listening.
Right. Not only being kind to ourselves, but being kind to the kids as well. And we are trying to do so much. I mean, Freud spoke about parenting as being an impossible perfection. This is impossible exponentially, because we're trying to be teachers and mothers and parents and friends and partners. And it's just too much for most of us.
Right. Yeah. So a way to get through is support and getting through this together. Anybody else want to jump in on this discussion around stress and what parents can do to help their own stress, as well as support their children through these stressful times?
Paula, I've got a couple of thoughts that jump up based on what Bryan and Susan have shared. One is just to watch, for us and for our kids, how we're consuming the media.
Important.
Not just the news media, but also the social media. It's we tend to, when there's a crisis or when there's so much news, there's so much to digest, we tend to keep going back to our phones and keep going back to the news. And most of us find that it doesn't make us feel better. It actually just heightens that tension or that hypo or hyper arousal. So what I try to suggest is, if it's important to be informed and also to put a cap on it. So like giving yourself, okay, I'm going to look for 5 minutes, and even setting a timer. Sometimes it sounds really silly,
Yeah.
But we sort of need that limit on how much we're consuming, because we often don't even know the impact that it's having on us, and then by extension our kids.
Right. Exactly. Go ahead.
No, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love the idea of the timer, because the news and the way, the media is kind of set up is like, it's set up to suck us in.
Yeah.
So suddenly like 45 minutes are gone, and we've like consumed this really highly intense, stressful information for 45 minutes.
And we're not, usually when we're on our phones or when we're consuming the news, we're not aware of what's happening in our bodies. And we're often not aware of how it's affecting us, how it can dysregulate us and our kids.
Exactly.
And the other thing that I wanted to say is there's so much, this beautiful outpouring of free yoga classes and free homeschooling things. And you can learn this, and you can take this course, and you can do all that. And on the one hand, that's just lovely. It's beautiful. It's a sense of the connection, the interconnection you're talking about. And, these available resources are delightful. On the other hand, I think that we all need some permission to not have to learn a new skill, to not have to be homeschooling experts, right? Like it's okay to be a little bit more relaxed on some of the screen time, because parents need a break.
Absolutely.
So like use the resources if and how they are helpful. And also like, you don't have to join every free yoga class that's being offered, or make sure your kids are connecting to all of these resources. Pick maybe one, maybe it's one a day, maybe it's one a week. But just like, if we get out of this, our isolation and this chaos, not having learned a new skill, not becoming the world's greatest homeschoolers, not like having a clean house, that's okay too.
Absolutely okay. Right. Exactly. And using this time, like, for just connecting, spending time together. I mean, when
Definitely.
are we going to have another opportunity in this life to have this time to be good together, everybody together? So yeah, definitely. So I love your message. It's so important that just like, let's, be mindful of the schedule, not packing it too much, and that it's okay not to become a homeschooling expert. I hear a lot of parents are really struggling with that.
Yeah. Just that sense that it's okay to not be okay. And it's also okay to it's just good enough. Like, I'm just going to get through, and good enough is good enough.
Good enough is good enough. It's okay not to be okay. I love that. I love your message around that. So thank you for that. Anybody else wants to jump in before we move on to the next topic?
I'll jump in. This is Leslie.
Okay, Leslie. Yeah, hi, Leslie.
Hi. Well, I want to come back into the piece that you talked about, that there is such a huge connection. I mean, there's a huge demand on being connected right now. And I hear this all over, like, oh, we just have time to be together and we're going to be a family. That's really stressful. I just want to name that, because we have had a lot of connections sometimes. And to all be put into a house together and have this demand, especially in conscious parenting, we should love this time. We should connect in this time. My work, I usually work with people to make sure you have some healthy separation also. That's critical, because if we put that pressure on ourselves to always connect, I find myself as a parent, what I would do, I would become very engulfing and needing my child to also connect. Right. So I just want to give permission for everyone, especially the mamas that, as like Nicole said, that are trying so hard. Like, this is their moment. It's like, you finally got it. It's connection time. and just to be so compassionate and loving to yourself, to make sure that however that looks, even if it's 5 minutes, to step away, take a breath, and create some healthy separation also. They both are important during this time. And I just wanted to stress that a little bit.
Absolutely. And I love that message too. And such an important point that yes, it is stressful too. It's that flip side of the coin, so to speak.
Yes.
It is stressful too to have everybody under the same household and that separation and connection, like separation and time alone is important too. Great point.
For the parents and the kids, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. For everybody. Exactly. For everybody. Okay. Anybody else want to jump in on this?
Hi, Kim here.
Okay, Kim.
I would love to add first, I love what everybody has shared, and just kind of making that space, not only for our own emotions as they come up, but for our kids' emotions as they come up, because we're talking about connection, we're talking about these opportunities, and really being able to be emotionally present may be harder right now. This may be a time, as Bryan shared, that our kids are having more stress, more behavioral issues are coming up, and they may need us more, but it may also be a time where we don't have as much to give due to what's going on in our own internal world. And I think creating the space for ourselves and for our kids to allow all of our emotional experiences, that this is the first time we're doing this. The first time you do anything, it's normal to feel anxious and have worries about it. It's a normal experience emotionally for a very abnormal and rare circumstance in our world. The same as the other emotions that may be coming up for people. I've been talking to a lot of people where grief is coming up significantly, where there's a loss here of things. Kids that aren't saying goodbye at the end of the school year, kids that aren't having their graduation ceremonies, those types of things. And anger. Some people are angry about the unfairness of all of this. What's going on? How is this being handled? And so I think creating a container to first do that ourselves, to say, what am I feeling? What am I experiencing? And then to offer that to our kids would be really a powerful thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, thank you for the reminder that, kids and all of us are actually going through grief as well, with all these things happening. And with grief, there comes all different kinds of a roller coaster of emotions, and that it's important to tend to those feelings, and starting with our own feelings first, so we can also show up for the children as well. Great. So let's move on to my next topic that I wanted to talk about. How about like trauma reactions in children, like being a trauma therapist and knowing how the trauma impacts the nervous system and the body, and what kinds of things might we be able to expect in terms of, I guess my question is can this be, and is this traumatizing for children? And Bryan, could you jump in on that with your opinion?
Just from my perspective, defining trauma as any stressful event which is prolonged, overwhelming, or unpredictable. And so, when that event continues on, unexpressed, unprocessed, and misunderstood, it's the difference between a short-time stressful experience versus a long-term, potentially life-altering experience. So this all very much has the ingredients to be a traumatic experience. But if we will talk about it, if we will be angry, like some of the other panelists said, be sad and share grief and allow ourselves to process and talk. And I think that's probably at some level what people don't realize. I think it was Dr. Susan who mentioned, managing the social media and the television, is that our attempt oftentimes to make sense of the craziness, like watching TV incessantly and just everything you hear is about COVID-19 and everything on social media is about virus this, the virus that. Well, that's our attempt to actually try to make sense, but what it actually ends up doing is creating more anxiety and reinforces our stress response system. And so this can be traumatic, but it also has the capacity to not be. It can be just a stressful experience for a short period of time if we can communicate and process through it effectively.
Right, right. That's such a great point, because that's one thing we know about trauma, is that trauma is something becomes traumatized, overwhelming situation, and it can remain as trauma, sometimes even develops into post-traumatic stress when it's not processed. So right now is a good time to process everything yourself, as well as help the children process things.
I don't watch the news. So my mother sends me plenty of stress and trauma from television. I don't have to watch the news to know what's going on.
Yeah. I'm with you, Bryan. I don't actually even have a TV. I maybe, I have things coming through my phone here and there, and maybe I see something for 5 minutes, but that's it. So yes, another important point there.
This is Dr. Susan. I'd love to step in because I'm a trauma therapist as well and have been for 30 years. So let me just offer a few ideas. One of the things we may be seeing, and I'm seeing in my practice, is a lot of kids having trouble sleeping, having nightmares, having night terrors. And one of the things that really helps is a line from Dr. Dan Siegel, and this supports what Bryan has been saying as well, is learn to talk about it with your kids. He has a great phrase that I love, which is name it to tame it. So one of the things we can do that's really positive here is give kids skills, help them develop resilience, be there to support them, be there to help them. You can even model it with if they're young, with stuffed animals. If they're a little older, teach them something called soothing touch so they can learn to do that, and doing this all together, perhaps putting a hand on your heart and a hand on your belly, taking a few deep breaths, letting your shoulders drop even 5%, finding the soles of your feet. And we're finding with the research that if we can drop out of our heads and that constant rumination and perseveration and just be in our bodies and learn how to focus our attention on something beautiful, for example, the songs of the robin or the flowers that are coming up, that can really bring us down. Bryan was talking about hypoaroused or hyperaroused into what we're calling the zone of tolerance, where things are difficult and challenging, but we know that we have resilience.
Right. Thank you so much for all those wonderful tools. And it sounds like, just doing those throughout the days might be incredibly helpful to just kind of keep those trauma and stress responses regulated, basically. When we help kids kind of check in with their bodies and kind of become aware of what they are sensing and feeling inside. And as we help kids do that, we also do it to ourselves.
Exactly. In fact, you may want to try to do this with your kids 3 to 5 times a day.
Yeah.
It's really grounding.
Right. Exactly. Thank you for those tools and information. Anybody else wants to jump in on their opinion and their perspective on this trauma piece?
I'd love to share another tool. I have a great tool when we're talking about name it to tame it and opening up conversations with our kids. An easy way I've found to open up conversations, and with younger kids, you'll have them put their palms together and then just ask, how big are your feelings? And then they move their palms apart to show kind of a scale. So how big are your feelings? Yep, exactly. Yeah. Okay. How big are your feelings about the coronavirus? How big are your feelings about staying home? How big are your feelings about not being in school? how big are your feelings about not seeing your friends or certain family members? And it's really quick, and it opens up the conversation in a really easy way. Older kids are not going to want to move their palms like that. So you can use numbers. So 0 to 10 for older kids, 0 to 5 for kind of your upper elementary age kids, and just have them rate. How are your feelings about this? It's a quick little emotional check-in you can do. And more artistic kids might even want to draw it out. It's just a way to attune to their emotions and connect and open up that space, because a lot of times they don't have the words to talk about it, and it will come out, as Dr. Susan said, with sleep difficulties, or as Bryan said, with behavioral issues. So it's just opening up that space where they can name it to tame it.
Exactly. Wow. I love those tools, Kim. And, you know, kind of going, it's tying back to what Bryan was talking about as well. It's like all this helps kids process what's going on around them. I mean, we have to remember, like, children, they've only been in this world for such a short amount of time. So they don't have all the different, you know, life experience to really comprehend and understand what's going on. So things like that, helping kids kind of evaluate and rate their feelings, is incredibly helpful. So thank you so much for those very, very practical tools.
I'd like to jump in and just stress also that what can happen for parents is can trigger very early trauma responses in them. So it's very, very hard. I just love what Susan just did. I just relaxed as she said it, right, in myself.
Me too.
And I was like, oh, thank you. And I think it's so critical for parents to be mindful of that, because often we're going to feel like maybe our kids and their behavior are causing us to feel what we're feeling, but it's usually going to be activating maybe an early trigger response that we have that's very repressed in our bodies. So I think it's so incredibly critical for us to have our self-care. I have a process called the Safe Seat that I'll share. I gave you a pop-up call that I did. I'm happy to share that, because that's mainly my work, because we are such the regulator for our little ones, right? And so if we're really aware of that trauma that's getting activated versus this is a traumatic thing that's going on with my kids right now. No, maybe it's activating that traumatic memory. I know Bryan does a lot of amazing work with parents around this also, to be so conscious of what is getting activated in us during this time.
Right, absolutely. Thank you for reminding us about that. And would you actually, since you mentioned the Safe Seat, could you tell us just real quickly what it is about? And then people can still, I know you have that free gift, people can actually set up a pop-up call with Leslie, and we'll share the link at the end of this session. But tell us, like, just briefly, what do you mean by the Safe Seat?
Well, I adopted my daughter as a single mom, and I thought I had it all together, and I thought, you know, I had done all my spiritual work and done all of this, and I found myself in the weeds. So when I got there, I started thinking about children's games, and I thought about the game of tag. And in the game of tag, if everybody will think about it, when children are around 3 or 4 years old and they're playing tag for the first time and they're having a great time and they're running all over the field, and then they're about to get tagged, what happens? They freak out, right? They fall on the ground, they say, I quit, or they run off the field. And because they get triggered into their amygdala, they're gonna get triggered into that fight or fight. So in the game of tag, what we create is a safe base. So the child can run over to that safe base, they can hold onto that tree, and they can begin to regulate. And then as they regulate and they look back out, they go, oh my God, they're having fun out there. I want to go back out again. And they do this over and over and over again. So what I did was realize that I needed to create a safe base for myself, because I was getting tagged all the time in my parenting. I was feeling rejected and abandoned and acting like a rejected person, you know, and it was like, no, I got to go to a safe base. So the Safe Seat is a place that you can actually create in your home. Mine was on my couch. And what I would do is when I got tagged, I began to recognize I was tagged, I would run over to my safe base. And I would sit there and I would breathe and I would talk to that younger part of myself. Of course you're scared. This is a scary virus right now. And of course you're scared for your children and your family, and, you know, just to soothe that beautiful part. And the child would just start to go, inside of me and rest. And then I would find, as I soothed my own internal child, I would begin to grow myself up, and my adult would come online. And as my adult came online, I could look out and say, oh, my daughter's not rejecting me. She's just setting a healthy boundary, or she just said no, or whatever happened. I could come back into that immediacy, which Susan talked about, that immediate moment. And then we can show up as the adults. But I found I had to attend to that internal tag inside of me, that child. Otherwise, I needed my daughter to change so that I would be okay. So that's like a little mini version of the safe seat.
Beautiful. I love that. Having this safe seat in the tag of life is so important.
Yeah, we get tagged, parenting, you get tagged a lot.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
you
that, I
do.
think if I can just jump in real quick, I think
Go
that's,
ahead, Bryan.
that's wonderful, Leslie. And I also want parents to understand, because we've used that language, inner child, for so long. And I think that people, a lot of times, they kind of poo-poo it. But the reality is when we stress, we regress.
Yeah.
We become stressed, we revert to earlier developmental zones of comfort, and we start operating from that emotional age. So when you're talking about literally running over and jumping into that safe chair, you are giving yourself permission, like you said, to become mindful, to become more conscious of being triggered, and then to come back online in your thinking and your short-term memory, and then you can function from that older, more adult, more mature place again. So I think that's just, I love that concept.
Yes. Thank you for jumping in, Bryan. And yeah, the other thing that came to my mind, like when we are doing that, when you're doing that as a parent, you're also modeling that to the children as well.
Absolutely. My daughter had a safe seat behind the couch because I was not always safe for her. I was tagging her all the time. So she had a safe place also where she could go.
Yeah. And how important that is right now, like Leslie, you talked about earlier, like, well, everybody's home. So how about everybody has their safe seat and everybody can go to their safe seat?
Tag, go.
Exactly. Exactly. Great, great. Anybody else wants to jump in on this this discussion before we move on to the next one? Okay, great. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is the concept of resiliency, and how it's something that everybody really needs right now, is some kind of resiliency to cope with this crisis, to cope with this situation. So who would like to jump in and talk a little bit about how do you view resiliency? How do you define it and what it means, and how we can use that right now to help us through this crisis?
I'm happy to jump in.
Okay,
I can
go
give
ahead.
you, this is Dr. Susan, give you definition and give you a very quick practice that everyone can use when they're feeling triggered or so stressed that they're regressing. So resilience in a nutshell is basically the ability to bounce back. You know, so we get knocked down, that's part of life, we get back up. And it's a way for you to find balance, find what we call some equanimity or some peacefulness or some calm. And boy, can we use that right now. So a quick way to do this is from the self-compassion literature. We call this mindful self-compassion break. And I know one of the people on the chat wanted a little more soothing touch, so I can do this in about a minute and add some soothing touch first. So let's say, for example, you have a difficult situation with your child. Let's say your child has tagged you using Leslie's wonderful example, or you're upset, you've heard a piece of news, or you've had a fight with a partner, whatever it is. So the first step is just simply acknowledging that this is a difficult moment. And you may just want to pause, take a breath, say, this is a difficult moment. Perhaps put a hand on your heart. If it's really rough, put 2 hands on your heart. Perhaps cross your hands over your chest, hug your shoulders, and And people can try that with me now, just finding a movement that feels well, perhaps even 2 hands on your neck or your jaw or your belly, wherever it feels soothing. And you can share this with your kid as well. You can even teach the stuffed animals how to do it. So everyone is doing it. So this is a moment of difficulty, pause, and then realize, and this is sort of one of the silver linings of the coronavirus, is that we're not alone. We're all in this together. You are not the only parent right now who's going through a rough time. You're not the only person on the globe who's going through a rough time. We are all going through that. So the second phrase is, yep, I'm not alone in this. We're all in this together. This virus is an incredible equalizer. No one is totally immune from this. We're all vulnerable. And then the third point is, okay, this is rough. How can I be kind to myself? Maybe bring a little compassion to yourself. Maybe even think about what can I do that's kind to myself and my parent and my children. Just really bringing it down. So those 3 steps, this is a difficult moment. I'm not alone. Let me show some kindness to myself. So it's that simple.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So simple. But again, we have that touch is so important. That touch, touching our heart or belly or any part of the body, that in and of itself has this calming and soothing effect. And then bringing this piece of kindness and compassion to it.
Right. And the wonderful, really quick piece of research is that when we touch ourselves, and this is for people who may be alone or lonely, it is as effective as someone else touching us. The brain doesn't differentiate between our touch and the touch of another.
Right. And so important. Yeah. So important right now, because there's, a lot of people out there who are quite isolated right now too, and don't necessarily have that social contact because of the social distancing that is happening. So thank you for sharing that, Susan. How about anybody else who wants to talk about resiliency and how they define it and what they would like to contribute to this conversation around that?
So I want to jump in real quickly because I have to get off in 10 minutes for another call.
Okay.
But I want to just go a little bit deeper with what Susan said, and you would ask about this, is that, we get very one-sided in situations like this. We can only focus on the negative. We can, and it's there. That's a reality. I'm not going to talk about going to positive thinking, but I am going to talk about balancing it out. Right? So when we're on one side, I use the metaphor of riding a bicycle. If you're just on one side, you can never go forward. You can imagine trying to ride a bicycle if you're just leaning to the left, right? So what I suggest with parents often is to write like 50 benefits of this time. You can write a benefit. The benefit, as you said, is being home with my family. Well, what's the benefit of that? I get to know my children in a deeper way. Well, what's the benefit of that? I get to know myself in a deeper way. My children know me. So you can track down those benefits. Just doesn't have to be separate ones. And then as we do this, we, as Susan said, we start to come back into more of balance. Yes, there's benefits and drawbacks of this time. So the more we can come into that equilibrium, then we can move forward, and creativity just comes out like crazy. But when we're just on one side or the other, we can just get on the positive side too. Some people are like, this is the greatest thing in the world, it's doing this. It's both, right? So I just want to give that as a little bit of a tool. If you're on that really deep, dark, like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever, just do it with your kids too. They'll be great with it. Go over and name 50 benefits of this time together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that exercise. That's such a great idea. And I love this idea that you're bringing, like, everything in life has the other side of the coin. Everything is polarity. Yeah, we are living in that. So and it's okay to really that's actually balanced thinking. We don't have to be all Pollyanna, and we don't have to be like just ignoring what's going on in the world, but really to have balanced, realistic thinking. And guys, can you try to start your video? I think I might have figured it out. See if it works. Like, yay for the home run.
Oh,
Reveal. It's the big reveal here.
Paula, can I add something about the negativity while we're on the subject?
Of course, yes. Please
Hi,
go
everybody.
for it.
We have faces.
Yes, there you are. I just kept you all in suspense the whole time, you know.
What I wanted to share or to stress is that when we're looking at negativity and this, my focus and the sticky brains and all that stuff is all about this idea that our brains naturally see the negative more than the positive. It's called the negativity bias. It's built into all of us. It's actually a feature, not a bug. It's like evolutionarily, we are wired to scan the environment for threats. And so this sense that, you know, we all sort of sometimes feel like there's something wrong with us, right? Like, why do I see the negative more than the positive? Why does, like, the day can be fine and then one thing happens that goes south and then I feel terrible, or that's the only thing I pay attention to. But that's natural. And so we don't have to feel bad when we see the negative more than the positive. We don't have to beat ourselves up for that. And then the next piece in that is this idea of neuroplasticity, which is, I break it down very simply. It's just your brain gets good at what it practices. So the more our brains naturally practice the negative. So if we can see that, then I don't have to beat myself up for it. And I can choose to pay a little bit more attention to the other things that are there. And the more I practice those, the more we practice them, the more we practice them with our kids, the better our brains get at those. So it's not, now this Pollyanna happy optimist thing, but it's this freedom to see that you actually get to choose what your brain gets good at, right? Biology and evolution and psychology may have given you particular patterns, but we actually get to empower ourselves to choose these things. So when we get caught in the negative, it's not my fault. I don't have to feel bad for feeling bad. It's okay to not be okay. And then there's this amazing, like, to teach your kids that you actually get to change your brain. Like, you're actually in charge. You can train your brain to do things the way, in a different way. And yeah, it takes practice, and yeah, it takes time. And there's this ability that most of us don't even know that we have. So as we talk about resilience, it's nice to know that, yeah, this one's not my fault, and there's something I can do. And you can do this when you're 2 years old, and you can do this when you're 92 years old.
Any age, right? And that's what we know now, that yes, I love that perspective on resiliency, that our brain is actually really resilient. It's incredibly resilient, and that we get to choose, like, we get to choose what we do with our brain. What do we focus on, what our perspective is, and we get to choose how we see this virus too. Like, we've talked a lot about that today. We get to decide, we get to choose how we see that. And you know, my suggestion, let's see it as something that can move us forward, that we can learn from this in so many ways. So yeah, thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, and the idea that the choice, like, it's not that, again, if we see the negative more than the positive, so then we can get down on ourselves, like, oh crap, I'm seeing the negative, or I'm not using this as an opportunity. But where I like to see it is that every moment is a new opportunity. If you miss the last one, you get another one right now. You miss this one, you get another one. You miss that one, you get another one. So I don't have to beat myself up for losing it. I have another one right here. There's another opportunity right here.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that we are all the time in that state. And, you know, so I talk a lot about, and my summit was also about how to become a peaceful parent. It doesn't mean that we are peaceful all the time, right? It doesn't mean that yes, we are, you know, there are going to be moments, but then to kind of, jumping back in on that and having that as your home base to return to, so to speak. Great, thank you. Anybody else wants to jump in on about that resiliency? Okay. Great. Let me look at the time. It is 11:25 right now. Leslie, I know you have to go soon, right?
Yep, pack of the car.
How about everybody else? Are you okay staying for another,
Yep.
maybe?
I've
Nicole?
I've got 11:30 scheduled as well. So
Yeah, me too.
a few more minutes.
Okay. So why don't we, those who can stay, and we can take some questions then from the audience. And then if you have to jump off, that's perfectly fine. Let me see. So, Bryan, anything else you want to, before you jump off, anything else you would like to say to the audience?
I would encourage everyone. I keep seeing the little comments in the chat pop up that there's some good things being said there in the chat, and I think a lot of times parents can learn as much from one another as they can from the professionals and the experts. And just to tie into what Nicole was saying, I love to encourage parents to mess up. I think our greatest opportunities for growth and healing lie after we've really messed up, because every moment is a new moment, and we always have an opportunity to get better. We just have to learn from our mistakes and not be so judgmental. And then I did notice earlier that Ben in the chat mentioned, not looking for something that's not creating something that's not there. Yes, these are stressful circumstances, and for some families they will be traumatic circumstances, but for other families this is just a little adjustment period, and children may struggle, but it doesn't mean that they're having a massive trauma reaction or anything like that. So it's really important for us to take a step back as the adults, because we're the ones setting the thermostat that's going to control the temperature. And if we can just slow down, and I'm a big advocate for parents just sitting on the couch and just chilling out, and let the kids come to you, let them go away, and take the time to just be present, mindful, and conscious. And it just, taking care of ourselves during this time and all other times is just of the utmost importance. So thank you for having me, though, Paula, and it's so pleasure seeing you, the other experts here, Nicole and Leslie and Dr. Pollak.
Thank you, Bryan. Thank you so much for jumping in here with us and reminding that it's okay to mess up. It just helped me kind of feel better about the whole mess up with the videos as well. Like, it's okay. Now I learned how to do that. Now I won't do that next time. So okay, I feel better about that. So thank you, Bryan, and a good reminder for parents as well. Yeah, things are gonna, we're gonna mess up, and things are gonna get messy, and it's okay.
Yeah. If I can,
I want to say real quick, just before I jump off, because
yes,
I got
go
to
ahead.
call 2 minutes. But
Yeah.
Bryan, my favorite time to go to the safe seat is after I've messed up.
Yeah.
That's when I go. Instead of feeling the guilt and the shame, I take my little one and I go, "Oh, honey, of course you hit her, or what, you yelled or whatever. You didn't know what to do." So that's my favorite time to go. And then I walk her down to be able to say, and the reality is you're an adult now. I give her a place to step, but instead of going to that guilt and shame, it's a perfect time to go to the safe seat.
Right.
So thank you. It was lovely to see all of you.
Thank you. And Leslie, I just dropped in the link for people to schedule a call with you. So take that link, schedule. It's a free call, pop-up call with Leslie if you want to chat with her.
Great.
So thank you so much, Leslie, for jumping in here and participating.
Bye.
Bye, Leslie. Bye, Bryan. And Nicole, I know you gotta go too. Anything else you want to say before you jump off?
I lost my cursor for a second. The biggest thing I'd say, I spend a lot of time talking about things being okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be okay. We tend to, as parents, we look at what's happening with ourselves and with our kids, and we tend to, I say we should all over ourselves, right? I shouldn't do this. I should do this. I shouldn't be like this. I'm supposed to be smarter. I'm supposed to be better. I'm not supposed to be stressed. And most of our suffering is really not so much about what's happening. It's about our relationship to what's happening. So with what's going on, right, we cannot change what's happening, most of it, right? I can't change where I'm supposed to be or not be, or, economy, all of this stuff. But if I can see it, then I might be able to change my relationship to it. So that sense of, I'm not okay right now. Well, I can beat myself up for that, and that makes me tighter. Or I can see that that's okay too. Right. So we get to validate the feelings, the emotions of our children, and also validate the feelings and thoughts and emotions of ourselves. And that's where I think that's where our power lies. It's not like we can't change the situation, and then we can decide how we want to relate to it. And that itself just takes practice and a lot of patience.
Right. Thank you so much for that message. So important that yeah, we can, we can work on this, how we relate to the situation that we are in. And
again,
validating
that's in every moment, right? You miss
moment by moment,
the last
right?
one, you try the next one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nicole, before you go, do you have a resource on your website or anything that we could offer for the participants?
I do. Yeah, and I will follow up also with you a little bit more on this, but I've got this book, Sticky Brains, is my, believe it or not, negativity, bias, and neuroplasticity for children. Basic bad thoughts are sticky. You can make good thoughts stick too. It's going to be published after every delay. It's going to be published in the next month, and there's the ability to get just a PDF copy right now. So if you've got younger kids and you're trying to figure out like how we talk about this stuff, I'm happy to share that, and that's on my website.
Great. Okay, so I'll do a follow-up email with everybody. Make sure that everybody gets a copy of the PDF.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So good seeing you. You take care.
Cheers.
Okay, great. So we are going to take a couple questions here before we all jump off. Dr. Susan and Kim, you have a couple more minutes for a few questions?
And also, I'm just wondering, I have a visual that will support Bryan's wonderful point about repair. And this is something that all parents can do with their kids and we can do on our own. So just imagine that this is a little snow globe. Let's say you've had a difficult interaction with someone you live with or are sheltering in place with. What you might want to do is recognize that, like the snow globe, you're really stirred up right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you may want to pull this snow globe out. You can even make one yourself with water and glitter. And then you may just want to say to your child, Mom or Dad, it's kind of like that right now. There's sort of a blizzard going on. There's a storm going on. But if we wait a few moments, things will settle. How about if we all sit and breathe together, do some supportive touch together, and all calm down a little, soothe ourselves a little. And whoa, the water in that globe has cleared. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Nicole's point. We can be, this is what our minds are like. We can learn to let our minds settle just by choice and just by our breath.
Absolutely.
So that's a simple, easy visual.
Perfect. And yes, and that's so powerful with children, especially having that visual and making it more concrete, because they're looking at that globe and they're really feeling those thoughts settle. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad the video started working for that.
Yeah, great. Good work.
Good work. So, okay, let me take a couple questions. So I have a few folks who emailed me. So let me take those first. So one question is, kids are being distracted from schoolwork. They don't want to do it. They want to keep laying on the couch or goofing off. The mom who wrote this message is, she's feeling like the police. And then everything is so hectic and chaotic that the whole family ends up eating frozen pizza at night because there's no time to meal plan. And, she's really exhausted and tapped out. And not only that, but she is works at the hospital over the weekends, which is like absolutely wow, like one in the front lines of things. So what could you offer this mom and any other mom or dad in the same kind of situation? Kids not wanting to do the work and just, goofing off, not listening, don't want to do the schoolwork.
I think, first of all, it's giving yourself permission that it doesn't all have to need to be done right now. I think that's key. And then the other part is having some co-creative conversations with your child about how they can engage and contribute when things are different like this. What does that look like? And again, recognizing, as other panelists said, that kids are going to struggle in different ways right now, and what that looks like. And it may not be just not listening or not wanting to do the work. There might be something a little bit more going on. So making the time to speak to them and figure out, like, what is it, why are you struggling with doing your work? And if it is just the work and it's like, I don't want to do it, then that's figuring out, well, sometimes we have obligations and we need to do them, and what's going to help you get this done.
Yeah, I'm happy to support what Kim has said. I totally agree. And I think it's going to help all of us if we can work out a schedule. So I know a number of parents who say, okay, it is school time or project time at 9 o'clock. And then at 10 o'clock, then we take a break, do some exercise. And then let's try, doing some mindful movement or some soothing touch, whatever you can do so the kid has a schedule. Because at school, the schedule helps regulate our kids, just as our work helps regulate us. So the more we can help them learn to regulate themselves, the better it is. I think if we give them permission to have tons of screen time and Netflix time, things go downhill quickly.
Right, right. So having some structure, routine, and we know this from children, when they have the routine and structure, it helps with their anxiety, because anxiety comes from not knowing what's happening next. So having that as much as possible. And I know that some parents are not able to have that, because one of the parents I spoke with yesterday was like, well, both mom and dad work at home, and then there's meetings. So then you have to kind of like trying to juggle that somehow. But if you can, yes, having that schedule and some structured time. And if you have questions about how to set up the schedule, email me. I just had sent out an email last week about this and gave an example for a schedule, how it could look like, and then some ideas for like, you can do arts and crafts, you can do games. I have a big resources of like board games and things like that. You can do like to plan ahead, like take some time on Sunday, for example, to plan ahead. Also, I have resources for meal planning, for example, so that you can plan the entire week's meal ahead of time. You don't have to scramble every day.
Oh, great.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Kim. Did you have something to add?
I also have a schedule. It's posted right now on the Growing Up Confident Facebook page, but it's more of a framework for those who don't want a rigid structure. For those of you where your family doesn't thrive with at 9 o'clock we do this, at 10 o'clock we do that, because as you said, there may be the parents have to be on video conferences at certain times. And I know the kids here are doing school at certain times on via video conference, and it's not steady. And so it's more of a framework approach where you talk with your kids and you choose from, I created 6 different areas, like, what are you going to contribute today? How are you going to connect today? What are you going to do to learn or create or play or rest? And so it's just kind of coming up with, these are the things we want to accomplish today, similar to what we would do as adults, like, here's my little to-do list, and how can we fit them into our day so that you get them checked off, knowing that not every family thrives in a rigid schedule, and some families absolutely need that type of schedule to thrive.
Exactly. That's great. That's a great resource. So people can go ahead. You said it's on your Facebook.
Yep, it's at the Growing Up Confident Facebook page. And if anyone needs that, you can reach out to me. My email is kim@growingupconfident.com, and I'll get it to you.
kim@growingupconfident.com. I just dropped it in the chat here, the how to subscribe to Kim's newsletter. So definitely use, there's lots of resources Kim can offer. So go ahead and sign up for that. So let's move on and take a couple more questions. I see there's some raised hands. Let me see. How can I do this? Again, I'm like, okay, I'm not exactly sure how to do this. Panelist, okay. Let me see. Okay. Chat. Okay, let me look at these questions here. So there's one attendee is asking, son is 12 and gets kind of aggressive and violent at the best of times. Being in lockdown with him feels very unsafe. So kid who is having a lot of dysregulation, anger and aggression going on, and the parent is feeling even unsafe in that situation. So what are some ideas for that? Because you typically in those kind of situations, one thing is like, kids to have more space, to have space to go outside and do movement and stuff like that. So any ideas?
Yeah, well, let me jump in first. Enormous compassion for you, because this is really hard right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure your child is used to many different supports, and it's when everything's taken away, it's rough. I would look at and maybe even brainstorm with your partner, if you have one, or with your child about what has worked before. What has helped contain the violence? Think about what the child needs. So if your child is 12, you've had a lot of experience. So really draw on your intelligence, your resources, and your knowledge about what has worked in the past, and see if you can put that into action.
Great. Thank you. So yeah, going back to, okay, what has worked, what hasn't, and then somehow modifying that into the situation, as well as getting and receiving some support.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Kim, any ideas for this one?
No, I agree with Dr. Pollak. And I think, if you have a support network, reaching out to them. I know a lot of therapists have been busy getting teletherapy set up. And, I think if you have a support network, making sure that you're in contact with them would be helpful too, because we don't want anybody to be in an unsafe situation during all this.
Great idea. And I am figuring out, somebody's raising their hand. I'm so excited right now. I just figured out how to do that. So one of the attendees are going to jump in right now. Let me there. Hi, can you hear us? I think this is with the phone number 804-347-6892. I don't think we can't hear you right now. Let's see. Okay. Maybe they didn't. Okay, let me try this one. Okay. Hey, can you hear us with the phone number?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Hi. Yay. I'm excited. Yeah, what is your question? Oh, what happened? Can you hear us? You can ask your question.
Hear you, but
yeah. You had raised your hand with a question? Oh, okay. All right, let's try somebody else here. Okay. How about Ari? Can you hear us? You had raised your hand. Ari Nandi?
Ari needs to unmute herself.
Yeah. Ari, if you're unmuted, let me see if I can do that. Ari, can you hear us? Okay. So let me take one more question here. Okay, yes. Jennifer is asking, can you please share a list of these professionals and their resources via email? Yes, I will. How about advice about stomach pain in kids during stress, age 7? I think Susan, you were talking. You were talking about that earlier. Yeah.
So the important point to mention is often kids feel their feelings in their body, especially in their stomach. Some kids may get headaches. But one thing you could do is, a 7-year-old, you may say, okay, honey, often when we have tummy aches, there's something difficult going on. Let's talk about it. What are you feeling? And another way that can be very concrete and helpful to a child is say, okay, let's, imagine what's happening in your tummy. Like, what does it feel like? And the kid may say, oh, it feels like a rock. Go, oh, okay, rock. So you try to bring all the senses in. That's heavy, isn't it? How heavy? And the kid may say, oh, it's so heavy, it feels like a Mack truck, if you have a kid who really likes trucks. Oh, good. Ooh, Mack truck, that's big. What else? What color is it? Oh, it's black. Oh, heavy, black. Is there any movement in it? Yes, sometimes it's bouncing all over and it's knotted. Oh boy, bouncing, knotted. And then as the kid starts talking about what he's seeing or feeling, you may want to say, oh, how about if we draw that big black Mack truck knot in your tummy? Yeah, okay, let's do that together. Or maybe even act out what's happening with that Mack truck. Ooh, what does that Mack truck need? Maybe it wants to play, you can tell I had a boy, with a cherry picker or a school bus. So you get the child to begin to engage with what's happening in his tummy or her tummy.
Right.
So,
And I love that. And my experience, every time I do that exact thing with a child, they feel so much better. The tummy feels better. And
exactly.
it's this teaching, it's really teaching about the mind-body connection for the child. And think about it this way, everybody out there is like, this is such a precious gift that you're giving to your child, teaching them about the emotions and body sensations, really giving these tools and skills for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely.
Because they're going to remember this. Yeah,
exactly.
they're going to remember this.
We're teaching them resilience. We're teaching them how to talk about emotions. And we're teaching them how to care for themselves.
Right.
So when they're grown-ups, they won't need to say, oh, I need antacids, I need Prilosec. They can say, oh, okay, this is stress.
Exactly. Yeah. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, and I love what you shared, Dr. Susan. I do all of those things in my practice as well, helping kids identify their body sensations. And one resource I just want to throw out there for parents that I use with the kiddos in my world is an awesome book on body sensations. It's called Listening to My Body by Gabby Garcia. And so it's a great thing. You could just read it and it tells them about different body sensations. And it's a great kickstart for a conversation before you get into the let's figure out how you feel when you have these emotions. Let's describe it. Let's experience it. Let's draw it. And it really helps some kids that are a little less connected to their body.
Great.
I just noticed one great comment. How can you talk to toddlers? So let's say you're trying to talk to a toddler about what's happening in the body. Toddlers can usually make noise. Like, if your tummy could talk, what would it say? And the kid may go, or, ah. So just finding ways that work with your child, no matter how old they are, to, say, well, what would it want to do? And the kid may go, punching or hitting, but just any form of expression is helpful.
Right. Great. And that's really, to get all that out, to get all that energy out, to get the emotions out and get the regulation back online. So great. Wonderful, wonderful information. I know that there are a lot more questions. So I'm gonna, so a couple ways you can get those questions answered is to email me. My email is info@pollak@lcsw.com. I am also offering 30-minute peaceful parent calls. So let me drop that link there as well. You can go ahead and schedule a call with me for free and get your questions answered. There's that link for that. And Susan, you have 2 articles here.
Yeah, and in fact, the last article has a little bit of the pandemic playlist. So just trying to leave on a fun note. This is
Great.
something you could dance to or play with. They're appropriate for this time. One is the classic Gimme Shelter from the Rolling Stones, and I have a link on that in the Psychology Today blog. The other is, and we've been joking about being parenting police, it's from the Police, and it's Don't Stand So Close to Me.
Okay.
So speaking of social distancing, this is something we can laugh about. Don't stand so close to me.
Great, great. Love that. Love that. I can't wait to check it out myself. So thank you for sharing that. And then you also have some wonderful resources on your website. You have those guided meditations. And can you tell parents how they can access those?
Sure. My website is full of articles and meditations that are free. So if you want to read, if you want to listen, there's also a whole bunch of podcasts. It's drsusanpollak.com.
Okay, great. Let me drop in the link. Some people said that you can see the links. Okay, let me, and if you can't, don't worry if you can't get these links from here. I will do a follow-up email with everybody's resources, everybody's websites, and all that stuff. So if you can't catch all this right now, I'm putting it in the chat. Let me put Kim's newsletter there as well. Okay, what a multitasking there.
All right. Paula, you've done an amazing job. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, this was such a valuable, such a timely discussion. And I just had this vision for this, and I felt the need that, you know, what can we offer for parents? How can we come together as a community of experts and really pour out everything and anything that we know so that we can stand side by side with parents. So I want parents out there to know that we are there with you. Go online. Lots of experts just like us are offering tons of free stuff. Take advantage of that. You are not alone, and we will get through this time together, and we will come out of this transformed. We will come out of this stronger, because sometimes we don't even know how strong we are unless that's tested.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I've been honored to be with you and to get to know all the other terrific panelists. It's just been delightful, and to get to know all the participants, especially through chat. So thank you.
Yes, great. And I think the chat will save, and some people were asking for a copy of that too. There was some good conversation going on. I'll jump in there later and read it as well. So thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Susan. Thank you, Kim. And yeah, I'll see you hopefully sometime soon. I'm sure we'll come up with another project again to work on together.
Great.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.